With War Within right around the corner, there are an absolute ton of classes that get some major updates. Some classes that felt a bit neglected before are now getting major facelifts, making them great in either PvP, raiding, Mythic Plus, rather than before when they weren't really that viable. This is going to be a perfect time for you as a player to decide if you're going to be keeping your main or trying something new come the War Within. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. My name is Sky, and today we're going to be bringing you 5 of the most fun classes you could main in World of Warcraft, The War Within. Okay, but before we dive into it, our friends over at boot.dev can teach you back-end web development, which is such a crucial skill nowadays, using Python and Go, all while being super fun and easy to learn. Boot.dev, it's just an online platform that's entire goal is to get you writing code as quickly and efficiently as possible, while taking away the biggest problem being boredom. You'll see if you head on over there, it has a wide variety of quests, level up, achievements, boss fights, all making it super fun and interactive to learn an important skill while bringing you financial security in your career. You guys can click the link in the description below, use my code TCBK, help out the channel. You get 25% off your payment for the first boot.dev payment, and you can get started today. And if you end up not feeling it's right for you, you have a 30-day, no questions asked refund policy, so there's zero risk in the entire thing. The platform is really interactive, visually easy to pick up. You simply log in, get started, go through all their different courses, and they have such a massive amount of content for you to dive into. The focus of this entire thing is getting you writing code properly, all while being really fun. So if you're looking for a new skill or want to dive into a new financial avenue, boot.dev is definitely your way to go in today's day and age. Once again, click the link in the description below. Check out my code TCBK to get 25% off your first payment. Get started today, man. Thank you guys so much for the sponsor break, and shout out to boot.dev for sponsoring today's video. Starting off with a bang, we have the Mage. Currently, the Mage is universally known as the most well-designed range DPS class in the entire game. Everything about this class screams fun, and every spec it has is an explosion of fireworks and nothing but a knockout from the developers. Fire Mage tossing out almost non-stop instant cast abilities to keep you in combustion almost permanently to just deal massive explosive damage to your enemies. You have Frost Mage, which controls the battlefield with endless slows and roots to line up a deadly blow of frozen orbs and comet storms to really destroy your targets. And lastly, you have the Arcane Mage, who manipulates raw arcane energy to take down enemies with nuclear arcane blast and barrages, all while being very unique in the process. The class fantasy of the Mage looks to be high up there this expansion, as mages are students gifted with natural flow of arcane magic, and while we are up against the dark forces below Azeroth, the Mage will make you feel like the main character in this story. Now, if you're a Mage capable of playing all the specs at a progression level, then you are in a very strong spot for your raid team. The Mage is so much fun and invaluable, and they also bring portals for your party, food for recovery, and one of the few classes in the entire game to bring a bloodlust effect with time warp, making them mandatory to have. With the new hero talents being implemented to every class in the game, almost everybody agrees that Mage has the most well-designed hero talent trees of them all. The Frostfire talent tree mixing Frost and Fire spellcast to have a perfect symbiotic relationship to control the battlefield and deal massive fiery burst damage. The Spellslinger tree, which causes your spellcast to embed arcane splinters in your target to deal crippling damage over time and explode if you build enough splinters. And then lastly, you have the Sun Fury talent tree that causes your major cooldowns to summon an arcane phoenix to assist you, while also raining down tons of meteors on the battlefield, being one of the most satisfying things I've ever played in World of Warcraft history. Overall, the Mage is a super fun and safe caster DPS class heading into the War Within, with all 3 specs being great during the beta so far. This easily makes them one of the best choices out of this entire list and in the game. Next up, we have the Monk. Despite being one of the lowest played classes in the game, the Monk feels like a blast so far during the War Within. If you love variety, this class has the ability to play all 3 role types and can very well be one of the best classes heading into the War Within due to their versatility. You have the very mobile Zen Master with Windwalker, who deals massive damage with their Blackout Kicks and Fist of Fury to dominate groups of enemies at one time. The Dizzy Brewmaster, who's attuned to withstand a big punishment to protect his allies by drinking a variety of brews and smashing kegs over enemies' heads. And lastly, the Mistweaver Monk, who can channel mystical powers to heal and restore injured allies, or join the fight to heal your party members through furious strikes of the crane. From a class fantasy perspective, the monk is going to stick out like a sore thumb. If you're going to be mowing down Nerubians with your fists and kicks to just summoning creatures of Pandaria to do your bidding, and even drinking brews to withstand punishment, I mean, the monk is going to be hilarious from a class fantasy perspective, heading into the deep, dark depths of Azeroth as not only one of the least played classes in the game, but their incredibly unique gameplay and visual style as well. It's no surprise to anybody that when it comes to performance, the Windwalker Monk stands out amongst the 3 specializations. They're always by far one of the strongest Mythic Plus classes in the entire game due to their AoE stops as well as very relentless cleave damage to mow down groups of enemies on their own. It's true that Brewmaster is one of the lowest rated tanks right now and they don't perform the best, but that doesn't mean they aren't fun to play, smashing kegs and drinking brews, all while being mobile with an interesting and new rotation with the latest talent tree rework. And then of course you have the Mistweaver Monk who punches and kicks enemies to deal massive damage while being very mobile and doing some decent throughput with your healing per second as well. When it comes to the hero talent trees, you have the Shadowpan talent tree that's most likely going to be your raiding option where you stack up a bunch of flurry charges to then deal a large amount of damage in a single strike. You have the Conduit of Celestials talent tree where you channel the inner Celestials of Pandaria to bring out all Celestial Conduits at once to assist you in battle and buff you significantly. And lastly, the Master of Harmony talent tree that stores some of your damage and healing done to targets to apply debuffs to enemies or buffs to allies to change the tide of battle as a fist-weaving monk. All throughout Dragonflight, and even now, they were destroying enemies quickly. You have high mobility, high burst, and a great toolkit for almost any matchup out there. A fast-paced karate master that is super fun, engaging to play, and with 3 different role types, you have a ton of versatility. I mean, what more could you ask for in a main? And next up, we have the Hunter. Yes, it's no surprise that one of the most popular classes in the game has made its way onto this list. It's funny because a few months ago, this class was nowhere near fun to play according to the other Hunter mains, but with the recent rework a little over a week ago, everybody in the community is raving about Hunter right now. All 3 specs got a fresh new look on a class that's just a staple in fantasy games. You have Beast Mastery that enables you to have an army of pets to call by your side to do your bidding to deal a variety of burst, cleave, and damage over time effects. You have the Lone Wolf Marksman Hunter that's dedicated to dealing heavy burst damage to enemies from what seems like miles away, and even in some cases, killing enemies when you're not even in line of sight. And lastly, you have the Survival Hunter who gets up close and personal and shines in the mid-range with all of their bombs, explosive shots, heavy-hitting kill commands from your pet, bringing you a super unique gameplay style. With class fantasy, the Hunter is always about conquering the unknown lands in Azeroth, and what better way to go into the unknown than in the deep, dark hells in the War Within to fight creatures like the Nerubians, giant robots, enemies of the void, and new, terrifying beasts of the dark. If you like all 3 specs of Hunter, you're in for a real surprise because whether we like it or not, there is always going to be one Hunter spec that performs very well in retail World of Warcraft. Straightforward rotations that bring a wide variety of gameplay between being a sniper, a beastmaster, or a mid-range specialist. Not only that, all of their damage can be used, typically on the move, which gives you the ability to dodge and avoid mechanics in a raid environment much easier than some of the other classes out there. When it comes to the Hunter's hero talent trees and talent trees as a whole, players are absolutely loving the reworks right now, and the class is beloved almost as much as the mage within the community. You have the Dark Ranger hero talent tree where you embrace hatred and strike from the shadows like Sylvanas, assaulting enemies with dark and necrotic shadow energy. You have the Pack Leader hero talent tree that forms an even deeper bond with your pets and causes them to be even deadlier than ever. And then you have the Sentinel hero tree like Tyrande Whisperwind where you summon arcane energy to call down mystical owls to rain destruction on your enemies in a variety of deadly attacks. The Hunter has always been a staple in fantasy games, and with this new land to discover, a complete redesign of their talent tree, while also bringing a diverse and strong capable damage class, it's no wonder why the Hunter is easily one of the most fun classes in all of World of Warcraft heading into the War Within. Now moving on to the Warlock. If you don't think the Warlock looks like a ton of fun to play, I don't think you're playing World of Warcraft. A pure DPS class with 3 very different gameplay styles that all look very strong throughout the beta. And this class is even in discussion for being one of the top casters in the game. Your specializations include a non-stop demonic summoning king that takes the most hellish creatures to do your bidding with demonology, the master of chaos and fire damage for insane cleave and burst damage with destruction, and the damage over time specialist that applies non-stop skin-melting shadow damage abilities to rot down your enemies with affliction. When it comes to a class fantasy perspective, Warlock has always been one of the greatest of all time. The fantasy of sacrificing the wholeness and good inside of yourself and to willingly take on dark energies and succumb to evil for the greater good is one of the greatest things you could ever have in a fantasy environment. If you love dealing damage rather than having the opportunity to tank or heal, the Warlock offers you 3 different DPS specs that bring invaluable help to your party and raid team. You have the Soul Well to give allies health stones, your Demonic Gateway to bring you great movement to your raid, Soul Stones for your tanks and healers, and even a Ritual of Summoning to transfer allies across the world instantly. Warlock is also known as having one of the most well-designed and diverse set of talent trees in the entire game, even rivaling that of the Mage. You have the Hellcaller talent tree that includes some of the most feared warlocks throughout history by taking fell fire at the cost of corrupting their own soul to destroy their enemies. You have the Soul Harvester talent tree who enters a pact with demons from the Twisting Nether to command them as their host to feed on the souls of your enemies in exchange for power. And lastly, you have the Diabolist, where after defeating the Legion, many of the demons were left unbound until now, where you command them as their master to wield unparalleled power from the Twisting Nether to destroy the battlefield. Listen, the Warlock is a terrifyingly fun range caster in the War Within, with 3 super fun DPS specs, the class fantasy being a dark spellcaster ready to sacrifice anything and anyone makes this class incredibly fun. And finally, we have the Death Knight. And oh my lord, this class is going to be a blast to play if you're a fan of melee DPS that is all about just being a juggernaut, dealing heavy damage, and unstoppable. When it comes to the specializations for Death Knight, all of them are in pretty damn good spots as well. You have the Icy Harbinger of Doom with the Frost Death Knight that delivers massive obliterates and chills enemies to their core. You have the Dark Guardian that is the Blood Death Knight who manipulates and corrupts the life energy of their enemies to sustain themselves throughout all who oppose them. And then lastly, you have the Unholy Death Knight that is the Master of Death and Decay who spreads infection and disease while also controlling an undead army of minions to do all of your bidding. When it comes to a class fantasy perspective, all 3 of these specs bring a wide variety of diverse array of just transmogs as well as gameplay styles. You have the High Lord Blood Death Knight that lives out the vampire fantasy, the unwavering undead powerhouse that is the Frost Death Knight, and then you have the Master of all undead and disease with the Unholy DK that literally controls the army of the dead. Taking the spec and heading into the heart of Azeroth to rid all enemies who oppose you seems like a pretty badass way to play a class if you ask me. When you're talking about performance with the Death Knight, they are easily one of the best classes in the game with all 3 of their specs. The adjustments and reworks to Frost and Unholy DK have pushed these classes into the stratosphere, easily making them some of the best classes in the game from a melee DPS perspective. They bring great utility for a raid with anti-magic zone and just simply being one of the most tankiest classes, so they're very hard to kill. And then their talent trees are phenomenal as well. They have always been consistent and fun overall, but when it comes to their hero talents, good God, they're one of the coolest things I've ever seen in World of Warcraft history. You have the Rider of the Apocalypse talent tree in particular that is so creative, and I can't believe it, honestly. With this talent tree, you summon the Riders of the Apocalypse to your aid. You also have the ability to ride your Death Charger in combat permanently and truly control the army of the dead on a whim. You have the Sand Laying talent tree that allows you to live out your fantasy as a blood-using shadow magic vampire lord to weaken your enemies and to passively boost you in battle to constantly steal life. And finally, you have the Deathbringer talent tree, which targets the souls of your enemies by tapping into the power of the Shadowlands and reminding them that their fate is inevitable, slashing them with a massive scythe to deal irreparable damage. With just the hero talent trees and the class fantasy coming into play, and then you have the innovative gameplay styles like no other class in the game, it is without a doubt the Death Knight is one of the coolest and most fun classes to play right now in the beta heading into the War Within. And if you like being a juggernaut stacked in melee armor, this is absolutely the class for you. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be the end of the video. What class do you guys plan on maining heading into the War Within? Is it the same old class you've been playing before, or is it something completely new? Let us know about it in the comment section below. Personally, I'm still waiting for those Shaman reworks so I can make my final decision, and it looks like Lance is going to be maining a Warlock this time around and being quite literally the Master of Darkness. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the video and want to see more War Within content, you could always like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching this video. It is always an absolute pleasure to be making content for you all. Until the very end, my name is Sky from the Comeback Kids. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.